This is Learning with Coach History. This is lesson 5 of 6 in the Roaring Twenties, Education and Popular Culture. In this lesson, you're going to learn about how education and pop culture changes during the 1920s. The key terms and people: Charles Lindbergh, George Gershwin, Irving Berlin, Georgia O'Keeffe, modernism, Sinclair Lewis, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Edna St. Vincent Millay, and Ernest Hemingway. America had become more prosperous. Business and industry required a more educated workforce. These factors caused an increase in the number of students going to high school. In 1914, only 1 million American students went to high school after elementary school. In 1926, the number was nearly 4 million. Schools changed as they grew. Before the 1920s, high schools were mostly for students who planned on attending college. In the 20s, high schools had a variety of students. Schools offered vocational or work-related training for industrial jobs. High schools also saw an increase in the number of children of immigrants. Many of them did not speak English. Even so, schools were successful in teaching large numbers of Americans to read. As a result of increased literacy, more people read magazines, newspapers than ever before. Newspaper circulation rose. Big city papers and newspaper chains swallowed up small town newspapers. National magazines were also popular. Some of them delivered the news. By the end of the 1920s, 10 magazines had circulation of more than 2 million each. The most powerful of the mass media was radio. Radio networks created something new in America: the shared national experience of hearing things as they happened. Listeners could hear speeches by the president or listen to the World Series. In the 1920s, Americans had more money and more free time than ever before. Fads, including crossword puzzles and games, swept the nation. People also flooded athletic stadiums to see sports stars. Charles Lindbergh thrilled the nation by becoming the first person to fly nonstop solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Lindbergh took off from New York City in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. After 33 hours, Lindbergh landed outside of Paris, France. On his return to the U.S., Lindbergh became the idol of America. In an age of sensationalism and excess, Lindbergh stood for the honesty and bravery the nation seemed to have lost. Even before the introduction of sound, movies became a national pastime. The Jazz Singer, the first movie with sound, was released in 1927. Walt Disney's Steamboat Willie, the first animated film with sound, was made the next year. By 1930, the talkies had caused movie attendance to double. In 1920s, American artists broke away from European traditions. Eugene O'Neill wrote plays about the confusion of modern American life. Composer George Gershwin merged jazz with traditional elements, creating music with a new American sound. Irving Berlin, another important composer, wrote 1,500 songs, many of which were heard in Broadway shows or in movies. American painters recorded an America of dreams and contrasting realities. Howard Hopper painted the loneliness of American life. Georgia O'Keeffe showed the grandeur of New Mexico. Their works represented modernism, an artistic movement that rejected traditional art as outdated and no longer meaningful. Many gifted American writers criticized American society. Sinclair Lewis was the first American to win a Nobel Prize in literature. His novel, Babbitt, made fun of middle-class America. Novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald coined the term Jazz Age to describe the 20s. His books, such as The Side of Paradise and The Great Gatsby, showed the negative side of the age. But the poems of Edna St. Vincent Millay celebrated youth and freedom from traditional restrictions. Some Americans disliked American culture so much that they lived abroad. Many gathered in Paris. The writer Gertrude Stein called them the Lost Generation. They included Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway introduced a tough, simple style of writing that changed American literature.